Okay, we're just going to be doing a blunt haircut for this one. So you need to have your hair sectioned into the 4 sections that we've been using throughout many of our other assignments. And we're going to be starting with our blunt haircut. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take some hair down right around the hairline. We want our sections to be fairly thin. The thicker they are, the less straight our haircut is going to be. And so we're just going to take down an initial section of hair. Make sure your hair is nice and clean for this. You want a nice straight part coming all the way across. And your whole head should be evenly wet. You don't want some of the hair dry and some of it wet because wet hair stretches more than dry hair. And then we're going to be making our initial guideline. Okay, so I've got my scissors, and as I'm combing this hair down, I like to have my mannequin's head tilted a little bit forward. It gives it a nice bit of a bevel under in the end for this blunt haircut, but certainly you could have it straight up and down, but I prefer to have it just slightly tilted forward. We're going to be combing this hair, and you're going to be cutting off no more than an inch. Okay, we want to be able to use this mannequin for a few different haircuts, so we're going to be cutting it off no more than an inch. So we want a nice straight line with our fingers. Our fingers should be parallel with the floor, and then we can go in there and start cutting. Remember, when we're cutting, we're always cutting underneath our fingers. We would never cut up on top. That'll bounce the hair up and you'll never get an even cut. You're not pulling with a ton of tension in here. If you pull with too much tension, that hair is going to bounce up and you'll never get an accurate read on how long that will be. So just let the hair fall naturally into your fingers. An even tension, and cut off about 1 inch. And this is going to be our initial guideline, okay? We're going to do that on this side here. Got that nice and straight. I'm going to turn our mannequin, and we're going to cut the same 1 inch off of the other side. And this is going to be our guideline, our stationary guideline for the blunt haircut. Now, I do want you to be watching when you're cutting this. You need to be holding your hands at a 0 elevation. So many of you, and I don't know why it happens, but you want to hold your hands up here. That is going to give you a very jagged end of this when you drop that hair down. You want this hair held at the 0 elevation. So your fingers, the hair should be pretty much touching your mannequin to get your guideline. Once you've cut your guideline, you have to cross-check before you continue going. If your first guideline is crooked, your entire haircut is going to be crooked, right? So let's just go in here and hold this hair down. Looks straight. It looks good, but sometimes that can be deceiving. Maybe it's off by about a centimeter over here from this side. So we're going to cross-check that by taking both of these ends of hair, bringing them right into the middle, and those 2 ends should meet up. And if they do meet up right in the middle of the hair, that means that I've got both of these sides are the same length. We did a check this way to see if that was a straight line, and it was. This is our stationary guideline for the remainder of the back of the haircut. So now you're going to be moving up and taking down your next section of hair. The smaller the section, the better, okay? 2 centimeters maximum in here. And you should always be able to see your guideline through this haircut. If ever you lose your guideline, go back to your original spot where you found it and keep taking down sections until you realize where it was that it was lost. But if you ever lose your guideline, don't just blindly cut. You have to find that guideline in there. If you're doing this at your work experience and you're doing your haircut and you've lost your guideline, ask your work experience stylist to help you find your guideline. So when you're combing this down at that 0 elevation, you should be able to see your guideline through. And I can see my guideline right up in there. If you cannot see your guideline, you probably took a too thick of a section, and so you'll have to take a thinner section to come down. But you should always be able to see your guideline, and that is what you'll cut this next section to. Don't cut into it, don't cut above it, cut exactly on that guideline, okay? And you're gonna have to move your mannequin, either move your mannequin or your body so that you're always facing the exact spot that you're going to be cutting. So I can see my guideline, and I'm cutting exactly to my guideline. Keep moving your mannequin. If you're not moving your mannequin, you can move yourself, walk. If this were a client you were doing this on, you would either turn your chair so that you were always face on with what you were cutting, or you would walk around your client. Because if all I did was stay back here and I pulled this hair back to meet me, I'm going to be making longer pieces here. It isn't going to be a straight blunt cut, it's going to be diagonaling forward. So always have your mannequin facing so that you're directly on with your mannequin with this blunt cut. Okay, so now we have our new, we have now still our stationary guideline is a little bit thicker. I shouldn't have to cross-check this guideline if I only cut up to that guideline. Then you'll take your next section down, no more than 2 centimeters, straight across. If your hair starts to dry out during the haircut, you should always have your spray bottle next to you to continue spraying so that you have a nice even wetness to the hair. You want the hair the same wetness throughout, because wet hair will stretch more than dry hair, so you will have an uneven haircut in the end if you don't have the even wetness of your hair. Okay. So the same thing goes for this section. You should be able to see your guideline. I tilt my mannequin's head slightly forward. As you comb that hair down at a nice even tension, not pulling too much, you should see your guideline. And I can see my guideline right there. You'll notice that how come, as I'm going through here, I don't have to cut off the same amount I did before. Originally, I was cutting off about 1 inch, and now I'm left with maybe only about 1 centimeter or 1/2 of an inch in here with this haircut. Well, this lady probably had some layers in there, and so the hair's not reaching. So don't pay too much attention on this blunt haircut saying, well, how I cut off 1 inch before, I need to cut off 1 inch again. That's not accurate. What you're checking for is the hair coming down to my guideline? Can I see my guideline? And then cut that hair exactly to that guideline. At 0 elevation. That is also very important that you're holding this straight down. You do not want to be holding this out here. This is all coming straight down at 0 elevation. When I'm on the side of my mannequin, I like to tilt her forward or off to the side there a little bit as well. Okay, so I can see my guideline. I'm at 0 elevation, and I'm cutting the hair exactly to the guideline. My sections are always nice and clean. And I am always turning my mannequin so that I am directly facing my mannequin each time. Right to the guideline. Okay, eventually you're going to get a point with your haircut where you're going to be able to take a section from above the ear. So we're going to take that all at the same time, and we're going to take a section from the back, only about 1 centimeter or 2 section, all the way to the front. Okay, now that you have it even on both sides, you can cut the back of the hair. And tilt it that far forward. Comb the hair down, the same as you usually do, right to your guideline. 0 elevation. I hardly have any hair to cut at this point. There's not much hair that's even reaching down to that original stationary guideline. Remember, it's called a stationary guideline because it never moves. You bring the hair to the guideline. And now we're going to go into the side of the hair. Make sure everything is evenly wet. and we're going to be creating a guideline on the side, our stationary guideline for the side. Okay, as I move it down, and I can see that here's the start of my guideline, or the end of my guideline from the back of the hair, and that's what I'm going to be using to make my straight across cut for the sides of the hair. You'll see on this mannequin, I didn't have to cut near as much from the sides. They must have been shorter than the back, but that's fine. I'm just wanting a nice straight cut. And then I'm going to move my mannequin so that we see the other side. Before you move on to pull down your next section, you're going to want to make sure that the two side pieces that you just cut are even. Okay? So it seemed even a nice straight cut on this side, and it seemed a nice straight cut on that side, but are we the same length? So take these two pieces of hair from either sides of your mannequin, bring them right into the middle, just go straight down the nose, down into the middle, and they should meet at about the same portion. Do they meet at the same portion? Well, actually this one's just a little bit longer, so I'm going to have to go back off to this side, take off that little bit, and actually as I do this I can see it did curve down just a bit at the end on the tip. So I'll take that off, making sure it blends still straight across with the back. And now I'll do another cross check in the front. So now I have my stationary guideline for the rest of the head. And now I'm just going to take down section by section, 1 or 2 centimeter sections, and continue with my stationary guide. Everything gets brought down to my stationary guideline. When we get to the top of the head, the one thing I want to show you is just how to comb the hair when we get up here. You don't want to be forcing the hair back if that's not the way it grows. So especially when we get up around the crown area, you want that hair to fall as it grows into its natural fall pattern. That way when you do that and you cut the bottom, you'll be cutting it so that it looks straight when it's completely dry and how it naturally falls. If you pull the hair and force it away from its natural growth pattern, your client is always going to have to be fighting with the bottom to make it look straight and even. And the other piece is right around the front area in here. And in the front, when you're combing this hair, try not to comb it over on their face. They're not likely going to wear it over on their face. So comb that hair just slightly back so that it works around the hairline when you're doing that. So those are the only things to take into consideration when you are coming into the back and more on the top. Make sure this is falling in its natural fall here when you're cutting it, and make sure that when you're in the front that hair can be combed back to the hairline, because your client's not going to be wearing it over their eyes. Okay? Otherwise it's the same thing. Take down each section and cut to your guideline. When you're done your haircut, it should be even because you checked your guideline at the very beginning. But if at some point you got off target with your guideline, you do want to make sure that you're checking at the very end to make sure that you didn't cut into your guideline and both sides of your hair are still even. So take some hair from the same spot on both sides of the hair, bring it into the middle, and it should come and meet at the same spot.